that supported broad birthright citizenship.
If you're in Congress in 1940 and 1952 and you want to limit the scope of one-Kim arc or to eliminate ambiguity, why do you repeat the same language rather than choosing something different?
NASA has filled its moon rocket gas tank for humanity's first lunar trip in more than a half century. The 32-story rocket is due to blast off with 4 astronauts Wednesday evening from Florida's Kennedy Space Center. 3 Americans and 1 Canadian are on board. The 2-hour launch window opens at 6:24 p.m. Eastern Time. On Wall Street, the Dow up by 224 points. The Nasdaq rose 250. The S&P advanced 46. Oil below $100 a barrel. More on these stories at townhall.com.
If you don't care about saving 50% off your wireless bill for the same 5G coverage the big guys are charging a fortune for, maybe you care about keeping jobs in America. Pure Talk does. They've pledged to run their entire operation from this country, including all their customer service. Or maybe you care about our nation's veterans. Pure Talk does. They've donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to America's Warrior Partnership, a fantastic organization working hard to prevent veteran suicide. Or maybe you care about closing America's skills gap. Pure Talk does. They're a proud supporter of MicroWorks. They're helping my foundation train the next generation of skilled workers. Don't get me wrong. Saving money's great, and you'll save plenty with Pure Talk. But if you want to be in business with people who share your values, dial pound 250, say micro, and switch to an American wireless company that actually stands for something. Pure Talk.
TMZ is turning its celebrity lens on Congress. It's tracking lawmakers on recess as the Department of Homeland Security shutdown drags on.
Viral videos of senators at airports, Las Vegas, and Disney World have fueled backlash, stepping up pressure for lawmakers to return. That pressure now extends beyond social media, with unions and President Trump all urging Congress back to Washington. But even if lawmakers return, there's no clear path to a deal. A bipartisan Senate agreement collapsed after House Republicans rejected it, leaving lawmakers at an even deeper impasse. Rich Thomason, Washington.
U.S. Forest Service headquarters will be moving far from its longtime digs in Washington, D.C. It's being relocated to Utah as part of a broad overhaul. The move is winning praise from Republican lawmakers. News and analysis at townhall.com. From Washington, I'm Keith Peters. A woman in Germany has been bitten by a wolf in a shopping center.
German authorities say a wolf has bitten a woman in a Hamburg shopping area in what experts call Germany's first known wild wolf attack on a person since 1998. On Monday evening, firefighters took the woman to a Hamburg hospital. Her condition remains unclear. Experts believe the animal was a young wolf searching for a territory of its own that accidentally wandered into the city. Hamburg's regional government noted that wolves generally avoid contact with people and dogs, and the unusual urban environment would have been stressful. The case lands amid growing debate over wolf protection and livestock attacks. I'm Charles de la Thesma.
Pakistan and Afghanistan's Taliban governments have resumed talks in China, which is mediating between the two sides to broker a durable ceasefire after weeks of fighting. They'll continue talks tomorrow. More on these stories at townhall.com.
What happens when feelings replace morality? If right and wrong are just personal opinions, then who decides why violence, theft, or chaos are wrong? In his new book, If There Is No God, Dennis Prager tackles the biggest questions of good, evil, suffering, and justice, offering clear arguments for anyone searching for moral clarity in a troubled age. If There Is No God by Dennis Prager. Available now at pragerstore.com. That's pragerstore.com.
Looking for heavy equipment but don't know where to buy? Purple Wave Auction has you covered. Always online and always no reserve. It's your destination for construction or ag equipment ready to work. We even sell semis, trailers, and fleet equipment for your operation. Best part? It's free to join. Head to purplewave.com. That's purplewave.com. Sign up for a free account and start bidding today. Purple Wave Auction, the easiest and most straightforward way to buy and sell equipment.
Live from Little Rock, Doc Washburn.
It's fun when they let me out to go talk to people.
He's like the adorable puppy, he chews on your Christian Louboutins, but somehow you still love him.
They say I'm a distinguished radio talk show.
No insult intended. The news you don't get anywhere else. Doc Washburn.
It's good to be able to get out of the studio so that I can actually kiss hands and shake babies.
You just can't make this stuff up.
As we say here in the natural state, y'all come see us.
You better watch what you say, or you might just find yourself with the lead role. The Doc Washburn Show, weekday afternoons 4 to 6.
If I don't lie down and take a nap, I'm going to keel over.
Doc Washburn on 101.1. The Answer.
Can we rock? What's up, Doc? Can we rock? What's up, Doc?
101.1 The Answer. Doc Washburn Show continues, or you can sound off and talk back 501-401-1011. Tonight, the president is going to be giving an address about the situation with Iran. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he has to say. That's going to be 8 p.m. Central. But I do have a preview. If you want a preview, General Jack Keane was on with Brian Kilmeade this morning. And we have a few clips from General Keane explaining what's going on. And I find it highly unlikely that there's any daylight between General Jack Keane's view of the situation vis-a-vis us and Iran and President Trump's view of it. So here's your preview of President Trump's address scheduled for 8 p.m. Central tonight. Let us go with General Jack Keane. Cut one, please.
It's the right goal, the right mission. The American people understand that after the 12-day war, what was surprising to Prime Minister Netanyahu and to President Trump and advisors around them is the renewed commitment that Iran had to all of its goals. And by that, I mean they began to rebuild the missiles that they lost. They made a decision to recover the nuclear program, even though it was set back considerably. And they were going to increase their drone production. And they immediately began funding streams to their proxies using different banks to deceive it, this time through Istanbul, very complicated process. So their goal of supporting their proxies, destroying the state of Israel, driving the United States military out of the region, and using their ballistic missiles as a threat, nuclear weapons eventually. Both of those leaders came together and said, they haven't changed one bit. And how are we going to get them to change? And the conclusion was the only way we're going to get this regime to change is certainly through force.
Exactly. And I'm thankful, by the grace of God, President Trump was able to overcome his natural inclination to want to make a deal. You recall his best-selling book came out in the late 80s, The Art of the Deal. He became very, very wealthy by understanding how to make deals. And I'm very thankful that by the grace of God, he was able to overcome that natural inclination to want to make deals and realize these guys are maniacs. They're insane. They're beyond making a deal with. All right, General Jack Keane on with Brian Kilmeade of Fox this morning. Here's cut two.
The president still, if you recall, tried to do some diplomatic effort, and the decision was made, we got to stop this. So it was the right decision to make, and I know some people don't agree with that, but I don't know how you continue to kick the can down the road when Iran is a growing menace and threat, much more so than the other presidents who had to deal with it. There were other presidents who should have confronted Iran because they were killing Americans. That alone should have been justification.
And he makes a very good point there. Iran has been killing Americans going all the way back to through their proxies. Hezbollah, how many Marines did they kill in that suicide bombing against the barracks in 83? Several hundred. They should have been taken care of then. No, look, I'm a big fan of Ronald Reagan too. That doesn't mean he was perfect. They should have been taken care of back in 83. And through their proxies, they continued killing or trying to kill Americans down through the ages since then. And this is on each and every American president who preceded Donald Trump, that they didn't do what needed to be done, and Iran became more and more entrenched. But we couldn't let them become entrenched enough so that when they developed ICBMs that could go 7,000 miles instead of just 2,500, and when they developed nukes, they would be able to blackmail us, just like North Korea. North Korea having nukes, that's on Bill Clinton. That's on his Secretary of State also. We couldn't allow Iran to wind up in that position because, unlike the communist atheists who were in charge of the old Soviet Union, or in charge of North Korea, China, whatever, who don't want to die, the Iranians, not the Iranians, but the people who are holding the country hostage, the Ayatollah and the mullahs, they believe in being martyrs. They believe that if you die in the way of jihad, then you go to paradise with Allah and the 72 virgins. So I've mentioned this before, but maybe you're listening for the first time. The reason that the Soviet Union and the United States both knew from the time we both had nukes that we're never going to fire nukes at each other, it's called mutually assured destruction. If one country launched nukes, the other one's going to launch nukes, and then everybody dies. And so that's why we had a Cold War instead of a hot war for decades. It's not like that with Iran. They would love to be martyrs. Well, the true believers would. I mean, I'm sure some of the guys left now are like, oh, maybe not so much, but they're still not going to negotiate. Anyway, let's go with General Jack Keane, cut 3, please.
Now, the reality is what they could do to us, as much as we want to hold them accountable in retribution for what they did to us in the past. What they could do to us is the reason for this operation. And I think 30 days plus in, it is going remarkably well. We are accomplishing the tasks that have been assigned to the CENTCOM commander on behalf of the president, to the IDF on behalf of the prime minister. And we probably have a number of weeks to go. For our audience, this is condition-based, and by that I mean the enemy has a vote here every day. And we're kind of on, use a football analogy because I think it fits. We're on the 20-yard line. We've made progress. We've come all the way down the field. We can see the goal line. We can see our objective in sight. And we're 20 yards away. And guess what? The enemy is throwing everything they can at us to slow us down. What do I mean by that? They're hiding missiles as much as they can. They're hiding their small boats. They're hiding their drones. They want to preserve some capability to retaliate after the United States stops. And so the targets are becoming more challenging to acquire the target, not to destroy it, but to acquire the target. And that's why they need as much time going forward now as they have had in the past to get to the 20-yard line. At the end of the day, we're gonna get in the end zone for sure.
Okay. I like the way he thinks. But one of the things that he said a little bit ago, the American people realize, and I wish that were true, and I don't understand how somebody with a much higher IQ than I have, General Jack Keane, thinks, quote, the American people realize, unquote. Because I'm here to tell you, there are millions of Americans who have no idea why we are bombing Iran. There are Americans who listen to conservative talk radio who are challenging me. I get stuff on Facebook. Well, I'd like somebody to tell me what threat Iran is to the U.S. I'm like, well, how many more Americans you want them to kill? What are you talking about? I said, they prove they're lying. Their missiles could go 2,500 miles to hit Diego Garcia. Well, we're 7,000 miles. What's that got to do with anything? I'm like, you want to give them time so you can find out? So the one exception I have to what General Jack Keane has been saying, because everything else he said makes perfect sense, is when he says, well, the American people realize. I'm like, brother, I wish that were true. There are millions of Americans who have no idea what you're talking about. And that's the problem with Washington. Again, regardless of how well-meaning and correct General Jack Keane is on everything else he said, the idea that the American people realize, brother, you're in a bubble. Look, just because everyone you have lunch and dinner with, just because everyone that you meet with in your office, just because everyone that you talk to on the phone or by text understands what you're saying, doesn't mean the American people understand that. And I wish, I don't know. It's just like if the people of Arkansas understood what was at stake in the Secretary of State's race yesterday, then Brian Norris would not have lost the runoff by 938 votes. He would have won by thousands. But they don't know. Anyway, we'll have some more about that a little bit later on. And we'll have more from General Jack Keane and Marco Rubio as we look forward with great anticipation the president's address this evening about Iran. And we'll be talking about the U.S. Supreme Court, birthright citizenship, and anything that might break between now and 6 p.m. Central, for that matter. The Doc Washburn Show continues on Little Rock's premier talk station, 101.1 The Answer.
What's up, Doc? Can we rock? What's up, Doc? Can we rock? What's up, Doc? Can we rock?
If things don't change, can you imagine America in 20 years? Scary thought, isn't it? The good news is we have the power to take our nation back. Stay right here for all the information you need. 101.1 The Answer.
Are you about to turn 65 and you're confused about Medicare? Hi, it's Doc Washburn. My friend Tammy Chase is a local Medicare enrollment specialist who meets with you in person and makes it simple. Tammy takes the time to understand your needs. She walks you through every option in plain language that's easy to understand. There's no confusion and no pressure, just expert help you can trust. Call my friend Tammy Chase for expert help in making it easy. Tell her Doc sent you. TammyChaseInsurance.com.
This is 101.1 The Answer, where Little Rock comes to talk. Start your morning with a voice you know and trust. Dave Ellswick, bringing you the issues that matter to Arkansas, the news behind the headlines, and conversations you won't hear anywhere else. Then in the afternoon, stay informed and fired up with Doc Washburn, breaking down the biggest stories of the day and what they mean for you. And all day long, hear from some of the biggest voices in talk radio. CNN's Scott Jennings, Mike Gallagher, and Larry Elder, bringing you sharp insight, lively debate, and the perspective you've been looking for. News, opinion, insight, and the conversations shaping our community. From Little Rock to the natural state and beyond. This is 101.1 The Answer. 101.1 The Answer, where Little Rock comes to talk. What if you could take 101.1 The Answer with you everywhere? You can. Download the 101.1 The Answer app and stay connected to the voices you trust, live and on demand. Wake up with Dave Ellswick. Stay sharp with Doc Washburn. And hear from national voices like Chris DeGaulle, Scott Jennings, Hugh Hewitt, Larry Elder, and Mike Gallagher. Breaking news, bold opinions, local insight, national perspective, all in one place, all in your pocket. At work, in the car, on the go. If it matters to Arkansas and America, you'll hear it on 101.1 The Answer. Plus, stream us live anywhere. Catch up on podcasts and never miss a moment. Search 101.1 The Answer in your app store and download it today. 101.1 The Answer, where Little Rock comes to talk. 101.1 The Answer. Weather.
There's a pretty good chance of rain during the morning hours today, but by the afternoon, all those chances dissipate. We'll see a high of 78 under cloudy skies. More rain chances for tomorrow and a high of 84.
101.1 The Answer. Doc Washburn Show continues, or you can sound off and talk back at 501-401-1011. We have a major address by the president about the situation in Iran coming up this evening at 8 p.m. Central. I'm trying to give you a preview. I guarantee you General Jack Keane, who is a military analyst for Fox News Channel, is very much on the same page with the president. If you're just tuning in, we had 3 clips from General Keane. We got a clip from Marco Rubio coming up, but first let's go with the last cut 4 from General Jack Keane.
Yeah, they are who they are. And that's why I'm not optimistic about the negotiations, because the Iranians, what they would have to do to meet our demands is give up everything that we're taking away from them by force. And they're not going to do that. And even if they did that, I still prefer the military option. Why? Because the military option so weakens the leadership that they're going to be in very difficult shape. And the military option does not provide them any economic relief whatsoever. If you negotiate with them and you agree they're going to give up everything, the immediate request they're going to have of us is sanction relief. Mm-hmm. And frozen assets that we have tied up, and an influx of money, just like the Obama administration did when they made the nuclear deal. So billions of dollars heading their way, that would give them an infusion, so to speak, and help them to recover and stay in power.
And we can't allow that, can we? We just absolutely positively cannot allow that. And I don't know how to reason with people who are not interested in the facts on the ground. I don't have any idea. Reminds me of when I was doing my best Don Quixote impersonation, tilting of windmills all over the state 4 years ago in the Republican primary for governor. And I had been invited to speak at a country night spot in England, Arkansas, I believe it was. And it's where people would go to I was going to say to dance and drink to country music, but they didn't sell alcohol. So you had to pay a cover charge because, you know, they had to stay in business somehow. Anyway, I was walking in the same time a good old boy was walking in who was a big country music fan, and I like some country music too. And he said, you know, I just don't understand why people have a problem with this COVID vaccine. Well, what's wrong with vaccines? Been taking vaccines all alive. Now, remember, this is by spring of 2022 when there was all kinds of news out about how dangerous the COVID vaccine is. And he hadn't heard word one about it. He had no idea why anyone had any problem with the COVID vaccine or any other vaccine. So you got less than 30 seconds as you're both walking into the place and you're running for office and you're getting ready to shake hands with whoever runs the place. How are you supposed to address that? I don't remember what I said. I'm sure I said something to the effect of all of the concerns and some of the reasons for the concerns. And I'm sure his eyes glazed over. It was just like, what? Well, sometimes I feel the same way in trying to explain to people why we had to hit Iran. Like I was saying earlier, they proved they have been lying about their missile capability when it became obvious when they launched 2 missiles at Diego Garcia over in the Indian Ocean. Oh, 2,500 miles. That's a lot further than they had admitted to. That means they could hit most of Europe. And the response on Facebook, somebody who listens to my show was, hey, we're 7,000 miles away. Who cares about 2,500? As if they're not in the process of trying to get to 7,000. It's just remarkable. Now, Marco Rubio has been a pleasant surprise as Secretary of State. Marco Rubio, who has always been one of the staunchest advocates for NATO. Always a big proponent of why we need to stay in NATO. So this kind of came as a shock.
Great value in it. And it wasn't just about defending Europe. I said it also allowed us to have military bases in Europe that allowed us to project power into different parts of the world when our national security was threatened. If now we have reached a point where the NATO alliance means that we can't use those bases, that in fact, that we can no longer use those bases to defend America's interests, then NATO is a one-way street. The NATO is simply about us having troops in Europe to defend Europe. But when we need their help, not their help, we're not asking them to conduct airstrikes. When we need them to allow us to use their military bases, their answer is no. Then why are we in NATO? You have to ask that question. Why do we have billions and billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, over the years, trillions of dollars, and all these American forces stationed in the region? If we can only use it, in our time of need, we're not going to be allowed to use those bases. So I think there's no doubt, unfortunately, after this conflict is concluded, we are going to have to re-examine that relationship. We're going to have to re-examine the value of NATO and that alliance for our country. Ultimately, that's a decision for the president to make.
You weren't prepared for that, were you? I mean, if you followed Rubio at all, you know, it's one thing to be a United States senator and have access to, you know, a lot of intelligence that maybe the rest of us don't. It's another thing to be the Secretary of State and have access to all the intelligence and go, okay, wait, why is it NATO is, well, it's a North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Okay, so there's a treaty in which we're supposed to protect and defend each other, and we're not asking for their help in defending us. We're saying, hey, you're going to let us use your air base for our guys on the way to Iran, right? And if they're like, no, we should be like, well, take care of your own business then. We're out. That's what we should be. More breaking news coming up. 101.1, The Answer.
Think about how many times I had
With SRN News, I'm Keith Peters in Washington. The astronauts are in the capsule and in place for the Artemis 2 mission. NASA's planned lunar fly-around by 4 astronauts would be the first moon trip in 53 years. The Space Launch System rocket is poised to blast off tonight with a 2-hour launch window of 6:24 p.m. Eastern Time at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. President Trump says he would bomb Iran back to the Stone Ages if the Islamic Republic doesn't open the Strait of Hormuz. Trump's remarks in a Truth Social post Wednesday come a day after he said he was nearly ready to wind down the war once he was sure Iran wouldn't be able to build a nuclear weapon. He's scheduled to address the nation later this evening. On Wall Street, the Dow up by 224 points. More details at srnnews.com.
These are uncertain times. Ongoing geopolitical tensions in the Middle East and beyond continue to shake global markets, driving up energy costs and creating widespread volatility. Gold has responded as history shows it does, climbing to new highs as a proven safe haven against inflation and unrest. Silver follows strong, offering even more protection for diversified portfolios. Call True Gold Republic at 800-300-GOLD for your free guide on protecting your retirement. If you're 55 or older, approaching or enjoying retirement, and have significant savings, you understand why stability matters now more than ever. Paper assets can vanish in a crisis, but precious metals have endured for generations. True Gold Republic helps Americans like you protect what you've built with real gold and silver IRAs. Call 800-300-GOLD for your free wealth protection guide today. No obligation, just information. Consult your tax professional before investing. Call 800-300-4653. That's 800-300.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. Palm Sunday marks the beginning of the holiest week in the Christian calendar. But for Christians in Syria and Nigeria, it was a day marked by bloodshed and tragedy. In Syria, sectarian attacks in a Christian town damaged homes, shops, and cars as men on motorcycles from a nearby Sunni Muslim town terrorized the community into the early morning hours. In Nigeria, the violence was even more horrific. Muslim gunmen attacked a university community, killing at least 30 people and injuring many more. Yet coverage of this violence was scant. Instead, there was widespread media outrage when Israel briefly paused public prayer gatherings due to Iranian missile threats before quickly reversing course. There's a very clear double standard, and it raises serious questions about whether Western media outlets are intimidated by Islamism. They certainly haven't shown courage. I'm Carol Platt-Liebau.
A sacred season is approaching, a time to remember God's deliverance, the night he brought his people out of bondage and into freedom, Passover. This year, many of God's people will observe Passover under the shadow of war. Across Israel, red alert sirens pierce the air. Families rush to shelters with just seconds to spare. The elderly fear they'll be left behind. Parents hold frightened children as explosions shake the night. Sleeplessness and uncertainty are now part of daily life there. But Passover reminds us that God hears the cries of his people and answers with love and compassion. That's why the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews is on the ground in Israel, providing food and emergency supplies, equipping bomb shelters, and caring for the elderly and Holocaust survivors, bringing comfort and safety to God's children. Join Christians around the world in praying for Israel during this sacred Passover season, asking God to bring protection, comfort, and peace to the Holy Land. Stand with Israel in prayer today by visiting supportifcj.org. That's supportifcj.org.
One oh 1.1, The Answer, Doc Washburn Show continues, or you can sound off and talk back at 501-401-1011. There's a lot going on now. I ain't gonna lie, fam. Jaden Ivey, released by the Chicago Bulls yesterday for expressing his Christian faith. When you think about all the stuff that the NBA ignores. So you got that? You got the deal today of the birthright citizenship stuff going on. U.S. Supreme Court. You've got the follow-up from the very, very close election yesterday for Secretary of State. Brian Norris announced today, to everyone asking, I'm weighing my options as we go through the certification process. That process exists for a reason, and we're going to let it work. What I can tell you is this: the work in Arkansas is not finished. It was never going to be finished by one election. Stay locked in, stay proud of what we built together, and go sign up at cfc75.com. If you haven't already, I will. More soon. Thank you for standing with us. Yeah, it took $400,000 for the governor and her minions to put enough lies out there for people to go, I guess I should vote for this one guy I've never heard of, Kim Hammer, over this other guy I never heard of, Brian Norris. Anyway, all of that having been said, there is a story out there that nobody's talking about. And that is of American scientists disappearing or dying under very suspicious circumstances. Nobody was talking about it. Now, Emerald Robinson is talking about it on a Substack, and I'll get to that in a minute, but let me just set the table for this. And again, remember, the Doc Washburn Show is the only show in talk radio who gives you stuff that nobody else, for whatever reason, wants to talk about. Start off with what the Sentinel Network is saying over there on X. While fireballs fall through roofs in Germany, Ohio, and Houston, the Caltech scientist who tested whether we'd see them coming was shot dead on his porch. His name was Carl Grillmair, Grillmair. His killer's charges were dismissed 11 days earlier. Independence Day, 2024. Frank Maywald was a senior technical manager at JPL Buildings, NASA's next generation of orbital surveillance instruments. He died at 61 years old. No cause of death was announced. No press release, no memorial. His obituary is the only proof that he ever existed. Anthony Chavez, Los Alamos. Wallet, keys, cigarettes on the table, car locked in the driveway, cadaver dogs found nothing. He vanished 6 weeks before Monica Reza. Nobody is reporting on his disappearance. 2 new names, 11 total, 4 states, 19 months. National outlets are running pieces of the picture. None of them have the full list. And that's the beginning of a thread from the Sentinel Network on March 25th. Now, why am I talking about this? Well, I'll tell you why. U.S. Congressman Tim Burchett out of Tennessee, a man who regularly speaks truth to power, a man who's been willing to say things like Islam is incompatible with Western civilization, incompatible with the U.S., they need to go back. He responded to this story about the strange deaths and the strange disappearances of these scientists with 2 words: keep digging. So when you have a United States representative who you really admire and respect, unlike most of the people up in D.C., who said something like, keep digging, all of a sudden you're kind of like, wait a minute. I think Congressman Tim Burchett, 2nd District of Tennessee, is implying that there is a there. So when Emerald Robinson, who used to be White House correspondent for Newsmax, but in my humble opinion was fired for being too Christian, when she's over on her Substack platforming a guy named Brandon Weichert with the article, Why Are America's Top Scientists Vanishing? The Real Arms Race Between China and USA is about top critical assets, human minds. You get the impression, or you go in one of 2 different ways. You could say, well, surely if this was an important story, at least conservative media would be following it, right, Doc? Or you can say, well, Tim Burchett is one of the very few people I trust in Congress. He says, keep digging. That means there's a there. So wait a minute. So why is the rest of journalism not covering this story? Well, as the great David Burge, Iowa Hawk Blog, once said many years ago, journalism is the art of covering a story with a pillow until it stops moving. And you think I'm just going to trust your garden variety conservative news website or Fox News channel or whatever to cover a story like this? No. So let's take a look at this article here. He says, here's the 11th article in our new section on international military affairs from the National Security Guy. There's a quiet shift happening in the U.S.-China arms race that no one is discussing. It has nothing to do with aircraft carriers or missile counts. It relates to people, specifically the people shaping the future of warfare. In mid-March 2026, 3 of China's leading defense scientists, including Zhao Shanjing, nuclear weapons, Wu Manqing, radar and metamaterials, and Wei Yiyan, missile systems, were quietly removed from the Chinese Academy of Engineering's website. No retirement notices, no obituaries, just gone. Days later, hypersonics expert Yan Hong, a leading figure in plasma aerodynamics, died suddenly, just 56 years old. On its own, this would seem like another obscure episode in China's ongoing internal purges. But then you observe what's happening here in the United States, and you notice a similar eerie pattern emerging among scientists working on advanced military technology development. Over the past year, a troubling pattern has surfaced. Scientists and defense-connected personnel in plasma physics, advanced materials, aerospace systems, and related fields have been murdered, vanished, or died under highly unusual circumstances. And he has a screenshot here from what looks like probably is the Daily Mail. Mystery of scientists dead or missing rises to 8 as 2 more men tied to America's most coveted secrets join the list. And it's from just yesterday. Chris Millar, U.S. Assistant Science Editor, the ominous web of U.S. scientists and lab employees who have died or gone missing continues to grow as 2 more cases have been linked to the disturbing trend. NASA scientist Frank Maywald reportedly died July 4th, 2024 in L.A. at the age of 61, but the cause of death has never been made public, and officials confirmed that an autopsy was never performed. Maywald had been a prominent researcher at the space agency's Jet Propulsion Laboratory since 1999 and worked on multiple projects tied to advanced satellite technology that could scan Earth and other planets. So again, that looks like a screenshot from the Daily Mail. But back to the Substack article here from Brandon Weichert on Emerald Robinson's Substack platform. He says, Nuno Loureiro, director of MIT's Plasma Science and Fusion Center, was shot and killed in December 2025 in a murder-suicide. Jaime Gostidas, an officer at the Air Force Research Lab, was killed in October 2025 during a strange domestic incident involving another service member. Monica Reza, a pioneering material scientist specializing in advanced aerospace alloys, disappeared while hiking in June 2025 and has never been found. Melissa Cassius vanished near Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico. Her phones were erased. She left her belongings behind. William McCasland, a former leader of the Air Force Research Laboratory who managed billions in aerospace research, disappeared February 2026. All these individuals were engaged in the same technological fields that will shape the future of warfare. So again, why am I taking this seriously? Why am I giving this the time of day? Why am I not thinking, well, it's just got to be another one of those wild QAnon conspiracy theories? I'll tell you why. Congressman Tim Burchett said, keep digging. Okay. Dig we will. The article continues, the same critical fields keep coming up. Begin with hypersonics. At speeds exceeding Mach 5, a plasma sheath forms around a vehicle. This plasma blocks communications, obscures sensors, and interferes with targeting. It is the biggest technical obstacle to making hypersonic weapons truly effective. In China, Yan Hong was addressing that problem. So was Lurero's wider plasma physics community and the U.S. Then there are advanced materials, the kind needed to withstand the extreme heat and stress of hypersonic flight. That's where figures like Monica Reza come in. Without breakthroughs in materials science, hypersonics can't scale. And then there's electromagnetics and metamaterials, the field associated with Wu Manqing in China. This represents the cutting edge of 6th generation stealth, radar evasion, and electronic warfare dominance. Put simply, these scientists are at the forefront of the next military revolution. Hypersonics, the battlefield bottleneck, which prompts the question, why are these scientists disappearing? The simplest explanation is internal dysfunction. China has a history of removing officials due to corruption or failure. Meanwhile, the United States faces fragmented security, insider threats, and a declining institutional culture. That alone would be worrying, but there's a more sinister possibility that raises the question, what if this isn't just dysfunction? What if this is part of a darker, larger power struggle unfolding in the shadows? In that kind of war, talent becomes the target. Scientists are not just assets, they're a critical strategic domain. By removing them, whether through coercion, recruitment, or something more final, it becomes a way to shape the battlefield before a single shot is fired. The real center of gravity is the last little piece in the Substack article. We tend to think of great power competition as involving hardware, ships, missiles, aircraft. But the true center of gravity is human. And right now, across the United States and China, the humans shaping the future of war are disappearing. To me, this appears to be part of shaping operations leading up to a much larger war that is likely to break out soon between the United States and China. Well, gee, I hope he's wrong about that. By targeting each other's high-end military scientists, Beijing and Washington are trying to weaken their combat effectiveness in the high technology area before open hostilities begin. We can expect more incidents like this as tensions between the U.S. and China increase. Now, that's from Emerald Robinson's Substack platform, article written by Brandon Weichert, entitled Why Are America's Top Scientists Vanishing? Brandon Weichert is the author of the book Winning Space, How America Remains a Superpower. I mean, look, I can't tell you I live your life or anything, but might not be a bad idea to spend $70 a year subscribing to Emerald Robinson the right way over in Substack. You're not going to agree with her on everything. I don't agree with her on everything. But I bet you if you just listen through my recitation of that article. I bet you never heard anything like that before. 501-401-1011 if you want to get on the conversation. The Doc Washburn Show continues. Little Rock's premier talk station, 101.1 The Answer.
Right here in our backyard, sellers trust Purple Wave Auction to move their equipment, from excavators and ag equipment to trucks and specialty trailers. Our no-reserve online auctions help local sellers turn iron into opportunity. You get a dedicated territory manager who knows your operation, your market, and your timeline, backed by nationwide buyer demand, local service, national reach, real results. See why more sellers choose Purple Wave. Visit purplewave.com to get started today.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. Palm Sunday marks the beginning of the holiest week in the Christian calendar. But for Christians in Syria and Nigeria, it was a day marked by bloodshed and tragedy. In Syria, sectarian attacks in a Christian town damaged homes, shops, and cars as men on motorcycles from a nearby Sunni Muslim town terrorized the community into the early morning hours. In Nigeria, the violence was even more horrific. Muslim gunmen attacked a university community, killing at least 30 people and injuring many more. Yet coverage of this violence was scant. Instead, there was widespread media outrage when Israel briefly paused public prayer gatherings due to Iranian missile threats before quickly reversing course. There's a very clear double standard, and it raises serious questions about whether Western media outlets are intimidated by Islamism. They certainly haven't shown courage. I'm Carol Platt-Liebau.
What is dedication?
The thing that drives me every day as a dad is Darian. We call him Day for short. Every day he's hungry for something, whether it's attention, affection, knowledge. And there's this huge responsibility in making sure that when he's no longer under my wing, that he's a good person. I think the advice I would give is you don't need to know all the answers. The craziest thing was believing that your dad knew everything. So as a dad, you felt like you had to know everything. You had to get everything right. It's okay to make mistakes. As long as it's coming from love, then, it kind of starts to work itself out. I want him to be able to sit back one day and go, we worked together, we did a good job.
That's dedication. Find out more at fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
In the world of generators, trust, not marketing, defines success. Northside Power is the trusted name when the power goes out. We're ranked #1 in generator sales, service, and installation. No gimmick and no side hustle. No matter your home's needs, Northside Power installs, service, and monitors generators 24/7. When the power goes out, excuses don't keep your lights on. Experience does. That's Northside Power. Generators isn't something we do, it's all we do.
The Answer. Doc Washburn Show continues. Sound off and talk back, 501-401-1011. We were talking about NATO earlier because Marco Rubio, who has always been a big cheerleader from NATO, is like, hey, if we got a war going on with Iran, some of these NATO countries won't even let us use their air bases as a stopover on the way to Iran, then why are we even in NATO? Well, Senators Mitch McConnell and Chris Coons said in a joint statement that the United States will remain in NATO regardless of actions by President Trump. Here's the quote from Senator Mitch McConnell, supposedly Republican from Kentucky, and Senator Chris Coons, supposedly Democrat of Maryland, but they both actually members of the Uniparty. Here's what they said. NATO is the most successful military alliance in history. It has underpinned the security of the United States for more than 70 years. The only time NATO has gone to war has been in response to an attack on America. NATO troops fought and died in Afghanistan and Iraq. alongside American forces. The United States must not take this sacrifice, nor our allies' commitment to make it again, lightly. Alliance disputes are as old as the alliance itself. Americans are safer when NATO is strong and united. It is in our interest for all allies to tend this unity with care. The United States joined NATO in 1949 when the Senate voted to ratify the NATO treaty, and the United States will remain in it. The Senate will continue to support the alliance for the peace and protection it provides America, Europe, and the world. Okay, so nobody is asking the other NATO members to go to war. All we're saying is, hey, man, need to use your air base on our way to Iran. And they're like, no, we don't think so. That's one thing. The other thing is Mitch McConnell, if you've seen any videos of him in the last few months, is as far gone, if not more far gone, than dementia Joe Biden was. Yeah, he's checked out, man. So I don't know who wrote this for him, but it wasn't him. He is checked out. Now, there was a response from my buddy, the great Bonchi, over at Red State. He said, so sick of this canard about Article 5 usage. The reason NATO has not had to go to war in Europe is because the U.S. has spent trillions of dollars over the decades to ensure it was protected. The Cold War was real. It wasn't won by European social programs. Now, in case you're wondering, what does he mean by Article 5? Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution says the Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution, or the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which in either case shall be valid to all intents. It goes on and on and on and on. But for them to say that the president has no say in whether we stay in NATO, yeah, that's messed up. And Trump's not perfect. He makes mistakes. We all make mistakes. But we'll see what happens. More coming up. 101.1 The Answer.
What else should I be? Apologies.
This is 101.1 The Answer, where Little Rock comes to talk. Start your day with Dave Ellswick in the morning, breaking down the stories shaping Arkansas and the nation and hearing what you have to say. Then in the afternoon, join Doc Washburn as he takes on the biggest headlines, asks the tough questions, and opens the phones for real conversation. Because on 101.1 The Answer, talk radio means your voice matters. Call in, sound off, be a part of the discussion at 501-401-1011. Plus, hear from some of the biggest names in talk radio. CNN Scott Jennings, Mike Gallagher, Larry Elder, bringing you smart analysis, strong opinions, and the debate everyone's talking about. Local voices, national perspective, and your chance to be heard. 501-401-1011. 101.1 The Answer, where Little Rock comes to talk. Find us at 1011fmtheanswer.com. Download our app, stream us 24/7, or watch us at snc.tv. KDXE, Kamek Village, Little Rock.
News this hour from Town Hall. I'm Keith Peters in Washington. President Trump says the U.S. war effort against Iran will be winding down. Correspondent Ben Thomas reports.
President Trump told reporters he sees an end to the U.S. war effort against Iran.
I think we 2 or 3 weeks. We'll leave because there's no reason for us to do this.
He was asked about the war's impact on Americans, especially at the gas pump.
We're $4, yeah, and we have a country that's not going to be throwing a nuclear weapon at us in 6 months.
But Americans are feeling the effects in the interim.
And they're also feeling a lot safer.
What is the plan to bring them back down?
All I have to do is leave Iran, and we'll be doing that very soon. And they'll become tumbling down.
Ben Thomas, Washington.
White House correspondent Greg Clugston will anchor live coverage of President Trump's address to the nation tonight on many of these same stations. That address by the president set to begin at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. The Supreme Court seemed inclined to strike down President Trump's executive order ending birthright citizenship. In oral arguments, Chief Justice John Roberts tells Solicitor General D. John Sauer it's unclear how already recognized exceptions to birthright citizenship can be at play here.
Children of ambassadors, children of enemies during a hostile invasion, children on warships, and then you expand it to the whole class of illegal aliens are here in the country. I'm not quite sure how you can get to that big group from such tiny and sort of idiosyncratic examples.
Artemis 2 with 4 astronauts is on the launch pad at the Kennedy Space Center with a 2-hour launch window beginning at 6:24 p.m. this evening. It's headed to an orbit around the moon. On Wall Street, the Dow up by 224 points. The Nasdaq rose 250. More on these stories at townhall.com.
If your investments are in a 401k or an IRA, then listen carefully. You spent 30, maybe 40 years building your retirement. The question is, are you about to watch it take a hit you can't recover from? Military escalation in Iran, tariffs in legal chaos, the U.S. dollar under pressure it hasn't seen in years. History is clear. When this much uncertainty hits at once, the investors who moved into gold and silver first came out ahead. Right now, Advantage Gold is offering a free gold investment kit and a free copy of economist Ken Rogoff's powerful new book, Our Dollar, Your Problem. Call Advantage Gold now at 800-900-8000. Thousands of Americans have already rolled over a portion of their 401k or IRA into physical gold and silver, completely tax and penalty free through Advantage Gold. Don't wait for the next surge to wish you had moved sooner. Results vary. Consult your financial advisor before investing. Call Advantage Gold at 800-900-8000. That's 800-900-8000.
Here's the Wall Street Business Report.
An increase in retail sales amid inflation worries.
Retail sales have increased, but the impact of the Iran war threatens to derail spending. The Commerce Department says retail sales rose 0.6% in February after dropping 0.1% in January. But there is a concern that Americans, already squeezed by years of elevated inflation, will cut spending because of higher gas prices. The average price per gallon jumped another 4 cents overnight and is now $4.06 a gallon. The price has increased more than $1 a gallon since the start of the war. I'm Mike Hempen.
Oil prices easing. That made life easier for investors on Wall Street at the closing bell. The Dow was up 224 points. The S&P 500 had a good day. It managed a 46-point gain, and the Nasdaq was up by 250. For the Wall Street Business Report, I'm Bob Agnew.
News and analysis at townhall.com. A pioneering female NFL official has sued the league over her treatment and firing. We hear more on this story from sports correspondent Gethin Coolbaugh reporting.
In a new lawsuit, one of the first 3 women to officiate an NFL game describes her 3 years at the pinnacle of her profession as a descent into the grip of a sexist institution unable to treat a woman as an equal. Robin DiLorenzo cited gender-based scrutiny, humiliation, and open hostility among the indignities she suffered from 2022 to 25 as a league official. The lawsuit in Manhattan federal court filed Friday sought reinstatement along with unspecified damages. An NFL spokesperson said DiLorenzo was terminated following 3 seasons of underperformance and called the lawsuit.
We all hear the radio ads about the IRS. They tell you to be afraid, to be scared, and they try to frighten you into calling. I'm not here to do that. Tax Relief Advocates is different. TRA is here to tell you that if you owe money to the IRS, whether it's $5,000, $50,000, or $500,000, we have a solution. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in your car, at work, or with your kids. No matter where you are, call now. 800-575-6745. Don't lose hope. TRA can eliminate or reduce what you owe to the IRS. Generous programs are now available that can give you a fresh start. Our passion is taxes and helping individuals fix their IRS problems. We have over 1,000 five-star reviews on Google and an A+ with the Better Business Bureau. You don't need to be afraid of the IRS any longer. End your tax nightmare today by visiting us online at TRA.com or call 800-575-6745. That's 800-575-6745. Tax Relief Advocates. Real solutions for real people.
Live from Little Rock, Doc Washburn.
It's fun when they let me out to go talk to people.
He's like the adorable puppy, you know. He chews on your Christian Louboutins, but somehow you still love him.
They say I'm a distinguished radio talk show.
No insult intended. The news you don't get anywhere else. Doc Washburn.
It's good to be able to get out of the studio so that I can actually kiss hands and shake babies. You just can't make this stuff up. As we say here in the natural state, y'all come see us.
You better watch what you say, or you might just find yourself with the lead role.
The Doc Washburn Show. Weekday afternoons 4 to 6.
If I don't lie down and take a nap, I'm going to keel over.
Doc Washburn on 101.1. The Answer.
What's up, Doc?
101.1 The Answer. Doc Washburn Show continues. Sound off a talkback 501-401-1011. You sitting down? Got some breaking news for you. Nobody else will tell you this. My old buddy, Steve Baker, who is a reporter for The Blaze, Glenn Beck's outfit, investigative reporter. He was at January 6th, 2021, at U.S. Capitol, before Glenn Beck had the wisdom to hire him to be a reporter for The Blaze. We've interviewed him before. He told us all kinds of things about January 6th we had no idea about. This morning, he quoted from the Bible, "The secret things belong to the Lord our God, but the things revealed belong to us and to our children forever." He said, amen, today's the day. So he was supposed to be on the Megyn Kelly show, the Megyn Kelly podcast at 12:30 p.m. Central today. He says, Megyn's team decided last minute to pre-tape my appearance on the January 6th pipe bomber. I'll give you the updated time as soon as I know. But then we have this. Steve Baker and Joe Hanneman. Joe Hanneman is kind of like the co-reporter, the guy who's been reporting on the January 6th pipe bomber situation with Steve Baker. Bombshell, former Capitol Police officer, Shawnee Kirkhoff. That's the one that Steve Baker and Joe Hanneman had fingered as probably being the January 6th pipe bomber. Weeks before the FBI said, no. It's this autistic black guy, 32 years old, lives in his mother's basement in Northern Virginia. None of it adds up, but that's our guy. Bombshell, former Capitol Police officer Shawnee Kirkhoff failed a November FBI polygraph test when asked if she placed pipe bombs on January 5th, 2021, according to a court filing. I mean, he's got the screenshot. Shawnee Kirkhoff was named as a person of interest in the January 5th and 6th, 2021 pipe bomb investigation. Ms. Kirkhoff was a U.S. Capitol Police officer on January 6, 2021, and was present at the Capitol on that date. Ms. Kirkhoff now works for the Central Intelligence Agency, otherwise known as the CIA. According to discovery produced by the government in this case, the FBI began investigating, questioning, and covertly surveilling Ms. Kirkhoff during the time it began investigating Mr. Cole. Yeah, Cole is their patsy, the 32-year-old autistic black guy that they questioned for hours without access to counsel. And most autistic people, if you question them long enough, they'll admit to anything you want. Anyway, on November 6, 2025, Ms. Kirkhoff was interviewed by the FBI and took a polygraph examination. She was asked 2 relevant questions. Number 1, did you place those pipe bombs? And number 2, did you place those pipe bombs that evening? Ms. Kirchhoff failed the polygraph. The FBI polygraph examiner noted Kirchhoff's very controlled reaction to the news of her failing the polygraph and seemingly, and that's where we lose it because they just gave us the screenshot of that first page. But Joe Heinemann says in the tweet following, the polygraph test was administered 2 days before a November 8th Blaze News article stated Kirchhoff was a forensic match to the hoodie-clad bomb suspect based on gait analysis. Now, again, this is GAIT. They analyzed her gait, the way she walked, and they compared it to the way the pipe bomber walked, and it was like a 98% match. So it's just remarkable. Now, Steve Baker says, to all those who have criticized and attacked me these last 5 months, I forgive you. He says, I do not forgive Dan Bongino or FBI Director Kash Patel, and I demand Patel's dismissal immediately. Lots more to come. Now, unfortunately, Brother Steve Baker puts me in a very uncomfortable position here because although I have never met Dan Bongino face-to-face, we're friends. Just in the interest of full disclosure, Dan Bongino has been very kind to my family and me. So I'm in an uncomfortable position, just in the interest of full disclosure. But just because I'm friends with Dan Bongino doesn't mean that I can ignore what I think is a huge story. Now, a number of people are saying, well, polygraph test is not admissible in court. And that's true. However, on a regular basis, law enforcement investigators use polygraph test failures as a springboard, as a foundation to do more investigating. That's all. So I just thought I should share that with you. And when Steve Baker says there's more to come, trust me, there's more to come. And Joe Hanneman has a pipe bomb subpoena issued to former U.S. Capitol Police Officer Shawnee Kirchhoff. Hey, he's got a link to the actual document. He also says Brian Cole Jr. defense team subpoenas a video shown to the FBI that purportedly shows Shawnee Kirchhoff playing with her puppies during the time the pipe bombs were placed on January 5th. I'll bet you she wasn't actually. Oh, I see. Yeah, let's take a look at this. Shawnee Kirchhoff was named as a person of interest in the January 5th and 6th, 2021 pipe bomb investigation. She was Capitol Police Officer January 6, 2021, was president of the Capitol on that date. She now works for the CIA. According to discovery produced by the government in this case, the FBI began investigating, questioning, and covertly surveilling Ms. Kirchhoff. During the time, it also began investigating Mr. Cole. So then the 2 questions they asked her, and she failed the polygraph. The FBI polygraph examiner noted Kirchhoff's very controlled reaction to the news of her failing the polygraph and seemingly rehearsed responses to examiner's questions. November 7, 2025, 5 days before the FBI opened a file on Mr. Cole, the FBI named Ms. Kirchhoff as a person of interest in the pipe bomb investigation and opened a file on her. The government immediately issued subpoenas and preservation requests for numerous electronic accounts associated with Ms. Kirchhoff. November 12, 2025, the same day, the government officially opened its investigation into Mr. Cole. FBI agents attempted to question Ms. Kirchhoff and Mr. Dickert at her residence. The next day, the FBI interviewed Ms. Kirchhoff's dog walker. The following day, Ms. Kirchhoff and her boyfriend, Daniel Dickert, also a Capitol police officer, were interviewed together by the FBI and Assistant U.S. Attorney Ballantyne. Throughout November 2025, the FBI interviewed Ms. Kirchhoff's co-workers at the Capitol Police. Her neighbors surveilled her without her knowledge, requested her employment records from the CIA, and sent surveillance footage of her walking to a podiatrist, likely for a gait analysis. Hello. Mr. Cole was arrested December 5th, 2025. The FBI closed surveillance lead on Ms. Kirchhoff on January 7th, 2026. Well, wait a minute. Wait. They were still surveilling her over a month after they arrested the other guy and said, he's our man? I don't understand. My producer, Tommy, is reminding me, well, Doc, you're not that bright. Okay, well, maybe that's it. I'll give you that. Mom always said I wasn't the sharpest knife in the firmament or the brightest bulb in a drawer. Sorry, slip gears there. So this is, my goodness. I mean, here I was getting all ready to talk about birthright citizenship and the insanity that went on in the U.S. Supreme Court today. And I'm looking at this official court document, Defendant Brian Cole Jr.'s motion for early return of subpoenas in the U.S. of A. versus Brian Cole Jr., defendant. And buddy, wait until I give you the rest. No. Wait until I give you the rest. Why were they still surveilling her over a month after they said, hey, this Brian Cole Jr. guy, he's their guy? Even though there are all kinds of questions that they could not answer, giving big time reasonable doubt that he could possibly be your guy. The gait analysis with him and the January 6th pipe bomber does not match at all. The gait analysis with the female former U.S. Capitol police officer now working for the CIA, who I've seen video, was the first Capitol Hill police officer to shoot at peaceful pro-Trump protesters. They shot flashbang grenades and tear gas canisters, and she was the first one. So why would we suspect her? Oy vey. Don't get me started. More coming up as the Doc Washburn Show continues on Little Rock's premier talk radio station, 101.1 The Answer.
What's up, Doc? Can we rock? What's up, Doc? Can we rock? What's up, Doc? Can we rock?
In the world of generators, trust, not marketing, defines success. Northside Power is the trusted name when the fire goes out. We're ranked number one in generator sales, service, and installation. No gimmick and no side hustle. No matter your home's needs, Northside Power installs, service, and monitors generators 24/7. When the power goes out, excuses don't keep your lights on. Experience does. That's Northside Power. Generators isn't something we do, it's all we do.
There's a real battle going on, not only for our future, but that of our children and grandchildren. How do we ensure they have it better than we do? One way is to keep listening to us. We're your information source in the battle. 101.1, The Answer.
You have a child or grandchild about to turn 26? Hi, it's Doc Washburn. My friend Tammy Chase is a local insurance professional who meets with you in person. She takes the time to listen and understand your needs. Tammy will explain all the options available in plain language that's easy to understand. She loves to help people, and she's an expert you can trust. Call my friend Tammy Chase for expert help in making it easy. Tell her Doc sent you. TammyChaseInsurance.com.
You served behind the desk.
You served in combat.
You did 4 years and got out.
You were drafted.
You gave 20 years.
You gave exactly what your country needed.
And so did you.
When you raised your hand and swore an oath to your country, when you put your name on the dotted line, you became part of only 1% of Americans who did the same. You are a veteran.
You are a veteran.
You are a veteran. Because no matter when, where, or how you served, you made a sacrifice for your country, and you deserve support.
If you're struggling with life after service, don't wait. Reach out.
Reach out to a loved one, to a fellow veteran, to VA.
Find resources at va.gov/reach.
Brought to you by the United States Department of Veterans Affairs and the Ad Council.
101.1 The Answer. Weather.
There's a pretty good chance of rain during the morning hours today, but by the afternoon, all those chances dissipate. We'll see a high of 78 under cloudy skies. More rain chances for tomorrow and a high of 84.
101.1 The Answer. Doc Washburn Show continues. Sound off Talk Back 501-401-1011. Steve Baker over at the Blaze has been covering the January 6th Fed setup since January 6, 2021. His operating theory from months ago is that Kash Patel has not fired nearly enough people subservient to him in the FBI. And they're holdovers from the old Barack Obama, Joe Biden, deep state FBI that are running rings around him. And he keeps on saying, well, I trust people working for me, and then he'll fire a few more. I trust people working for me. He'll fire a few more. Okay. So, I mean, let's take another look here at this this demand letter from the lawyers for the Patsy that the FBI is claiming planted the pipe bombs in front of the RNC and the DNC across from the Capitol January 5th and 6th, despite all evidence to the contrary. Defendant Brian Cole Jr.'s motion for early return of subpoenas. This is crazy. So again, Mr. Cole was arrested December 5th, 2025, after Ms. Kirchhoff had already failed her polygraph. The FBI didn't close the surveillance lead on Ms. Kirchhoff until January 7th, 2026. So why are they still surveilling her more than a month after they said, hey, we got our guy over here? Mr. Cole requests the issuance and early return of 3 subpoenas relevant to Ms. Kirchhoff. Number 1, a subpoena to Ms. Kirchhoff for the video of her dog taken at her home with her voice allegedly in the background, purportedly from the evening of January 5th, 2021, shown to FBI agents by her or her boyfriend, Mr. Dickert, in November, and any other photo, video, or audio created on the same device on January 5th, 2021. The identity of the phones on which the dog video was stored, Ms. Kirchhoff's employment records from the CIA in her possession, her offer letter from the CIA, and her standard Form 86 questionnaire that she completed for her job at the CIA, documents provided by Ms. Kirchhoff to the government as part of its pipe bomb investigation, Ms. Kirchhoff's home camera recordings from January 5th to 6th, 2021. It just goes on and on and on. I'm telling you, and Steve Baker had said this before, if the attorneys for Brian Cole Jr. are any good at all, if they're worth their salt, they're going to make the FBI look incompetent or worse. There's no question about it. And sure enough, that's exactly what's going on here. Exactly. Steve Baker's been warning about this. He doesn't post often, but when he does, it gets my attention. And again, I'm in a difficult position because, again, I'm friends with Dan Bongino, and obviously he and Steve Baker are definitely not friends. So Kyle Seraphin, former FBI agent, one of the guys who was persecuted by the FBI for having something to do with January 6th, who for some reason has me blocked on X. I don't know why. He's saying vindication. The FBI covered up a current CIA employee's failed polygraph failure to two simple questions. Did you place those pipe bombs? Did you place those pipe bombs that evening? He says FBI Director Kash Patel and Dan Bongino have some splaining to do. Uh-oh. Interesting response here from former senior chief, U.S. Marine Corps. Says Kirchhoff was a cutout. She believed she was planting training devices. Most likely she had no idea of the operation, now known as the Fedsurrection, because she later learned of the true nature of her role. Her polygraph showed signs of deception and therefore inconclusive. More from Kyle Seraphin. He says, remember the so-called puppies video that supposedly exonerated Ms. Kirchhoff? The filing today by Brian Cole Jr.'s defense indicates it is a, quote, video of Ms. Kirchhoff's dog with her voice allegedly in the background, unquote. Maybe I worked for a different FBI. How would that end an investigation? Yeah. Well, one guy, this Arbitus guy who's broken all kinds of stuff about January 6th, he says, how do you have a failed polygraph on both pertinent questions and your own gait analysis and pass on the investigation over what is essentially an audio file? It's just other people saying stuff like, well, that's not proof of anything. What the heck? Somebody else said that lie was circulated by 3 FBI sources familiar with the matter. They seemingly left out the fact that she wasn't actually on camera. It's just one thing after another. I think it's quite telling that at no point did President Trump congratulate Kash Patel and or Dan Bongino on supposedly getting the right guy as January 6th pipe bomber. I just thought I'd share that with you. We got to talk about birthright citizenship. There's a lot of stuff we got to talk about. There's crazy stuff going on at the U.S. Supreme Court today. But breaking news takes precedent, and that's what we do on the Doc Washburn Show. Little Rock's premier talk station, 101.1, The Answer.
With SRN News, I'm Keith Peters in Washington. The astronauts are in the capsule and in place for the Artemis 2 mission. NASA's planned lunar fly-around by 4 astronauts would be the first moon trip in 53 years. The Space Launch System rocket is poised to blast off this evening with a 2-hour launch window. There had been a brief hold in the countdown at the Kennedy Space Center, but the countdown has resumed. President Trump says he would bomb Iran back to the Stone Ages if the Islamic Republic doesn't open the Strait of Hormuz. Trump's remarks in a Truth Social post Wednesday come a day after he said he was nearly ready to wind down the war once he was sure Iran wouldn't be able to build a nuclear weapon. He's scheduled to address the nation later this evening. On Wall Street, the Dow up by 224 points. This is SRN News.
See, if something costs less, a lot less, but people are actually happier with it, that sounds like something to look into, and that's MetaShare. Maybe you've heard joining MetaShare can save you or your family up to $500 a month, and that's huge, but it's also true. People are just happier with it. They love being part of something that reflects and promotes their values and what they believe in. MetaShare works, too. It's been around for 30 years now, and members have shared more than $7 billion of each other's bills. People love having telehealth and a huge nationwide PPO network, so yeah, really, you can save a ton and like it better. Imagine being happy with how you're taking care of your health care, whether you're self-employed or part of the gig economy, or you just want a plan that you're happy with. Here you go. You can call right now and get a price within 2 minutes. A very, very smart use of 2 minutes. Here's the number you need. It's 844-45-BIBLE. That's 844-45-BIBLE. 844-45.
Real talent is defined by what people can do, not where they learn to do it. So by stopping at the education section of a resume, you might throw away the perfect hire. You might miss someone who has valuable skills to offer to help your business thrive right now and in the future. Because the truth is this: Skills First Hiring helps you see talent others miss, like more than 70 million stars, skilled through alternative routes. When you let their story unfold, you gain a competitive advantage, because hiring managers who start with skills are 60% more likely to find a successful hire. See the real person, complete. See what others miss. Hire skills first. Learn why it's a competitive advantage at tearthepaperceiling.org. Brought to you by Opportunity at Work and the Ad Council.
Don't miss cutting-edge coverage of daily news from an America First perspective on the Alex Marlow Podcast on the Salem Podcast Network.
Everything I'm seeing from the public is that public does not like the idea of just pure welfare and charity being done for people who are able to work and are not willing to work. So able-bodied people have got to get back to work.
Subscribe today on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, or at SalemPodcastNetwork.com.
Looking for heavy equipment but don't know where to buy? Purple Wave Auction has you covered. Always online and always no reserve. It's your destination for construction or ag equipment ready to work. We even sell semis, trailers, and fleet equipment for your operation. Best part? It's free to join. Head to purplewave.com. That's purplewave.com. Sign up for a free account and start bidding today. Purple Wave Auction, the easiest and most straightforward way to buy and sell equipment.
.1, The Answer, Doc Washburn Show continues. We sound off and talk back at 501-401-1011. This guy, Abdul El Sayed, Democrat running for U.S. Senate in Michigan. We had audio of him the other day saying, I don't want to talk about Ayatollah Khamenei the day we took him out. He said, because a lot of people in Dearborn are very sad about that. So he's out there on X now. He was on Fox News. And he's out there on X. He has the embedded video of Bill Hemmer trying to interview him. He says, Fox News doesn't like so-called radicals. Maybe we should start with the radicalization of MAGA taking us into yet another foreign war. Mike Rogers, who was chair of the House Intel Committee, said you're campaigning with the guy who said America deserved 9/11. So, yeah. They're going to hit us here. They're going to hit us here. I'm telling you. Now, I'm going to try to get to birthright citizenship. It's crazy, the Supreme Court today. But again, I got to tell you something that nobody else is telling you. From New York Post, Trump administration to investigate euthanasia death of gang rape victim scolds Spain for human rights failures. Has anyone told you this one? The Trump administration is demanding answers from Spain a week after 25-year-old sexual assault victim Noelia Castillo was permitted to die by euthanasia. Oh, I don't think it was permitted. It was worse than permitted. She wanted a 6-month waiting period to give her a chance to think about it. A leaked diplomatic cable obtained by the New York Post shows the State Department instructed the U.S. Embassy in Madrid Tuesday to open an investigation into the Spanish law enforcement's handling of repeated sex attacks, including gang rapes against Castillo, leading up to her tragic death. Top U.S. Embassy officials were also told to convey to the Spanish government the Trump administration's serious concerns with the many systemic human rights failures that led Castillo to seek out assisted suicide and allowed the terminal act to be performed even after she reportedly expressed hesitancy in her final hours. Yes, she had hesitancy, all right. The diplomatic cable that somehow or another the New York Post got a hold of said, we're deeply concerned by allegations that Ms. Castillo was repeatedly sexually assaulted while under state care and that no perpetrators have been brought to justice. We're also aware of reports that Ms. Castillo expressed hesitancy to undergo euthanasia in her final hours, but that these indications were ignored. This case raises serious concerns about the application of Spain's euthanasia law, particularly in cases involving psychiatric conditions and non-terminal suffering. I'll just tell you something right now. The further a country gets away from respecting Christian morality, the easier it is for them to justify all sorts of murders. And when Roe v. Wade passed January 2nd, 1973, Christians were warning about the slippery slope. And before too long, look the other way, euthanasia of elderly people. And do you ever think about organ donations? You ever think about the fact that organs are no good if you get them from dead people? That the people have to still be alive? Does that ever cross your mind? That's why the medical industry created the idea of brain death. Those people aren't really dead. It says Castillo opted to legally kill herself last Thursday under Spain's right to die law passed in 2021. Well, no, she didn't opt to legally kill herself because, as the diplomatic cable said, she expressed hesitancy. She didn't want to go through with it. A previous suicide attempt had left her paralyzed from the waist down. The young woman whose father waged a lengthy legal battle attempting to block the assisted suicide had been traumatized by the multiple sexual assaults she suffered before the age of 21. State Department indicated it believes Spain's lax immigration laws could be to blame for the sexual assaults. Oh, I think so. The cable notes, we are investigating allegations that the sexual assault of Ms. Castillo was perpetrated by individuals of a migration background. Oh, yes. Mass and illegal migration is a human rights concern, and Spain's facilitation of mass and illegal migration represents a dangerous threat to the rights and liberties of Spanish citizens, as well as broader regional global security. Now, in case you're wondering, Doc, what does this have to do with us? Why do you care? What concern do you have? Well, number one, she was a human being. And number two, if you don't think it's going to happen here, my sweet summer child, how naive you are. Really? Nothing new under the sun, fam. I ain't gonna lie. The State Department has asked the U.S. Embassy to work with Spanish authorities to obtain information about Ms. Castillo's rapists, including their migration status and whether they could have been unaccompanied migrant minors, and what legal obstacles have prevented police from bringing charges against potential suspects. Oh, I think I know. State Department asked U.S. Embassy officials to convey these concerns to the Spanish government by April 3rd. Castillo was approved for assisted suicide in 2024. Her father lost his 18-month legal battle to stop the euthanasia earlier this month when the European Court of Human Rights, what a joke, rejected his emergency appeals and ruled in Castillo's favor. But it's not her favor if she says, I don't want to go through with it, and they kill her anyway, is it? Her death sparked international debate about assisted suicide and Spain's controversial euthanasia law, which allows individuals with severe psychological distress to seek death. Castillo died wearing her prettiest dress after being administered a lethal cocktail of 3 drugs that stopped her heart within 20 minutes. So the same people who have a real problem with the death penalty for convicted murderers don't have an issue with this. Our Lord once said, woe to those who call good evil and evil good. Do you remember that? Were you aware of that? It's in the Bible. You might want to take a look. It's just insane. Okay, birthright citizenship. The Supreme Court had a lot of questions today for both sides on this lawsuit. Chief Justice John Roberts said, you obviously put a lot of weight on subject to the jurisdiction thereof, but the examples you give to support that strike me as very quirky. You know, children of ambassadors, children of enemies during a hostile invasion, children on warships, and then you expand it to a whole class of illegal aliens are here in the country. I'm not quite sure how you get to that big group from such tiny and sort of idiosyncratic examples. What this is all about is whether the 14th Amendment, which was passed to give citizenship rights to freed slaves after the Civil War, whether the people who passed that amendment ever thought that it was going to cover stuff like, women coming here from China having babies and then going right back to China, and then 18 years later, these Chinese babies born here, raised in China, hardcore communists, will be allowed to be American citizens. It's that kind of thing. The great Will Chamberlain, over at Article 3 Project, senior counsel over there, says the children of illegal aliens, by all rights, should also be a tiny and idiosyncratic group. Federal law requires that they be stopped from crossing the border and removed from the country if they are found. It's a larger group only because previous administrations failed. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Peter Schweizer, was on Will Cain today on Fox News. And he put the word out there. As the Supreme Court weighs ending birthright citizenship for children being born from non-citizens, a Chinese billionaire with ties to the CCP is being exposed for having more than 100 children through surrogacy with American women. Nearly half of international surrogate parents in the U.S. are Chinese. This needs to end. And that's what Will Cain said on Fox. Then he had Peter Schweitzer on with this shocking claim. Over the last 13 years, 100,000 Chinese babies per year have been born in the United States. China has created an industrial-grade production line of babies born in the USA, but loyal to the Communist Chinese Party. It's called birth tourism. Pregnant Chinese women will intentionally travel to the U.S. when they're due to give birth on American soil to automatically be given birthright citizenship. That baby will then be taken back to China almost immediately to be indoctrinated into Communist Chinese Party ideology. That child will then return to the U.S. when he's older. And birthright citizenship now. The great Peachy Keenan, conservative podcaster over there, says, Kavanaugh and Barrett's thank you present to President Trump, who took 1 trillion arrows on behalf of their nominations, is almost certainly going to be a knife through the heart of the country on behalf of some ingrate anchor babies raised to hate America and its citizenship. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, not very bright, said, if I steal a wallet in Japan, I'm subject to Japanese laws. In a sense, it's allegiance. Wait. She's actually saying if you go to another country and commit a crime, then you're a citizen of that country? She's that stupid? Oh, yes, gentle listener, she is that stupid. Solicitor General for the Trump administration, John Sauer, says based on Chinese media reports, there are 500 birth tourism companies in the People's Republic of China whose business is to bring people to the United States to give birth and then return. And Solicitor General Sauer drew a clear line for Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Today's illegal entrants crossed by choice and open defiance of U.S. law. Their presence is not rendered lawful by mere arrival. Under the original public meaning, citizenship flows only to children of parents who are lawfully present with intent to remain. The 14th Amendment was never meant to reward law-breaking or erase Congress's power over immigration. It affirmed sovereignty, not surrender. It goes on and on. Again, Ketanji Brown Jackson, she says, how does this work? Are you suggesting that when a baby is born, people have to have documents determining a newborn child is a citizen of the United States? Are we bringing in pregnant women for depositions? Laura Ingraham, Fox News, also a lawyer, says that question alone indicates how preposterous her appointment to the U.S. Supreme Court was. In other words, she's an idiot. She's an idiot. And it's a crying shame that there were 3 Republican senators who voted to confirm her. Sean Davis says over the federal, so a lot of people missed this earlier today, but Justice Jumanji, that's what he calls Ketanji Brown Jackson, Justice Jumanji, heavily implied during oral arguments that if you sneak into her office and steal her robe, that makes you a Supreme Court justice. Oh! Excuse me. Doc Washburn show continues. We'll squeeze in as much breaking news as we can after the break on Little Rock's premier talk station, 101.1 The Answer.
Crazy eyes, I've been a fooling.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for Townhall.com. Palm Sunday marks the beginning of the holiest week in the Christian calendar. But for Christians in Syria and Nigeria, it was a day marked by bloodshed and tragedy. In Syria, sectarian attacks in a Christian town damaged homes, shops, and cars as men on motorcycles from a nearby Sunni Muslim town terrorized the community into the early morning hours. In Nigeria, the violence was even more horrific. Muslim gunmen attacked a university community, killing at least 30 people and injuring many more. Yet coverage of this violence was scant. Instead, there was widespread media outrage when Israel briefly paused public prayer gatherings due to Iranian missile threats before quickly reversing course. There's a very clear double standard, and it raises serious questions about whether Western media outlets are intimidated by Islamism. They certainly haven't shown courage. I'm Carol Platt-Liebau.
Real talent is defined by what people can do, not where they learn to do it. So by stopping at the education section of a resume, you might throw away the perfect hire. You might miss someone who has valuable skills to offer to help your business thrive right now and in the future. Because the truth is this: Skills First Hiring helps you see talent others miss, like more than 70 million stars, skilled through alternative routes. When you let their story unfold, you gain a competitive advantage, because hiring managers who start with skills are 60% more likely to find a successful hire. See the real person, complete. See what others miss. Hire skills first. Learn why it's a competitive advantage at tearthepaperceiling.org. Brought to you by Opportunity at Work and the Ad Council.
This is 101.1, The Answer, where Little Rock comes to talk. Start your day with Dave Ellswick in the morning, breaking down the stories shaping Arkansas and the nation and hearing what you have to say. Then in the afternoon, join Doc Washburn as he takes on the biggest headlines, asks the tough questions, and opens the phones for real conversation. Because on 101.1, The Answer, talk radio means your voice matters. Call in, sound off, be a part of the discussion at 501-401-1011. Plus, hear from some of the biggest names in talk radio. CNN Scott Jennings, Mike Gallagher, Larry Elder, bringing you smart analysis, strong opinions, and the debate everyone's talking about. Local voices, national perspective, and your chance to be heard. 501-401-1011. 101.1, The Answer, where Little Rock comes to talk.
One 101.1 The Answer. Doc Washburn show continues. And sound off and talk back 501-401-1011. Mike Davis, Article 3 Project, who clerked for Justice Gorsuch, who was chief counsel for nominations for Senator Grassley, who was then the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, helped get Amy Coney Barrett, Brett Kavanaugh, Neil Gorsuch on the Supreme Court, and a lot of other people on lower federal courts. He says, dear Supreme Court justices, your job is to follow the law, even when it's politically difficult. The law is clear. We, the people, as the sovereign citizens, never gave birthright citizenship to illegals. Not in the 14th Amendment, not any statute after. If we change our minds, we will have our elected representatives in Congress change the law for us, like we did for American Indians. You wear robes, not capes. It's insane. The great Greg Price, conservative podcaster, says it just feels so painfully obvious that the 14th Amendment does not mean that a 9 months pregnant woman from Mexico can cross the Rio Grande illegally, give birth, and be allowed to stay because her child is now a natural-born citizen. Mike Davis, again, saying China has over 1 million citizens who also have U.S. birthright citizenship, birth tourists who can vote in our elections and take our welfare benefits. Do the justices who sold themselves as textualists and originalists think the 14th Amendment or any statute means that? And again, Associate Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, Ketanji Brown Jackson, said, if I steal a wallet in Japan, I am subject to Japanese laws. In a sense, it's allegiance. In other words, if you go to a foreign country and commit a crime, then you're a citizen. Nathan Halberstadt over at New Founding, capital venture firm, says it's probably in poor taste to say too much specifically about Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. Her comments really speak for themselves. But it remains true that DEI systematically elevated a large number of deeply unqualified and unserious people to roles where they are now doing tremendous damage, partly due to sheer incompetence, partly due to the sorts of ideological factors associated with being a DEI beneficiary. The question of how we navigate unwinding this in the years ahead remains open. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how we're going to be able to do that. I have no idea. That's a good question. So ABC News says the Trump administration must restore the legal status of potentially hundreds of thousands of immigrants who came to the United States legally through a Biden-era pathway, according to what a federal judge ruled yesterday. The great Jesse Kelly, a nationally syndicated radio talk show host out of Houston, said, Bukele, the president of El Salvador, didn't save El Salvador because he arrested all the criminals. He saved El Salvador because he removed the judges. Communist judges are the sword and shield of the communist revolution here in America. Removing them is everything. Well, is anybody going to do that? I hope so. Because in the meantime, we've got all these illegal aliens raping and murdering people. We got all these judges saying, we don't care. Yeah, let them go. No, don't. You don't have to hand them over to ICE. No, it's all good. I wonder what's going to be like when our new prosecuting attorney is sworn in next January, because the one we have now, it got out that he was having an affair. Oh, well, we'll see. Doc Washburn here. I'll see you at 4:06 tomorrow. God willing, the great Dave Elsick up at 7:06 in the morning. 101.1, The Answer.